The World Economic Forum now ranks disinformation in the top 10 global risks for 2025. It's not just a political concern anymore. It's now a major financial threat and a business priority. AI has supercharged this, with deep fakes and bots now able to make lies look exactly like the truth, as well as spread faster than ever before. Misinformation and disinformation can cost businesses billions and damage reputations in ways that are very hard to repair, and no business is immune. Last year, half of all businesses in the US were hit by deepfake attacks. Today, we're joined by two experts from SEC Newgate who are going to be exploring with us misinformation and disinformation and how this can affect corporate reputation. We're joined by William Marks, Director for Crisis, Special Situations and Litigation, who is a reputation management specialist, and by Tom Flynn, Head of Digital, who works with clients to deal with crises online. Welcome to you both. So, Will, why is AI-generated disinformation such a threat to corporate reputations today?
Well, AI has fundamentally changed the speed and scale that misinformation can spread. Whereas corporates would have maybe days or weeks to respond to these threats in the past, this now can happen in a matter of days with just one or two people responsible for this misinformation. Social media has rewarded engaging and often sensational content, allowing disinformation to spread much more rapidly than it used to. And a single deepfake can erode stakeholder trust, impact a share price, and trigger regulatory scrutiny. So at SEC Newgate, we advise clients to treat these digital threats as board-level risks, and which requires proactive monitoring and scenario planning. The key is to try and build digital resilience before a crisis hits.
How prepared do you think corporates actually are to facing these disinformation threats?
The short answer to that is not very prepared at all. And I'm going to give you an example where last week we were running a crisis simulation with a range of clients. It was a fake financial services company that we'd made up that was experiencing a reputation attack online that appeared to be bot related. Now, the clients in the room, they went straight to the traditional ways that you might deal with that. They went to, can we get posts taken down from social? They went to, let's get legal involved. But the problem with that with an attack of that speed and nature is you're dealing with platforms like X. X under Elon Musk has basically a very stripped back moderation function. It's very difficult to get hold of it.
Yeah, exactly. So you'd send an email, an email to info at, and then it disappears into the ether.
Yeah, unless you're
moving
paying a
quickly.
substantial amount of money for a gold tick on X, you're very, very unlikely to get anyone responding with any speed to any problems that you have. Now, it is what it is, but ultimately it's the source for lots of clickbait news. So you can see how this gets into the media. What I mean by that is, how many stories do we see in the media now that are someone said something on X and someone else disagreed, rather than actually being newsworthy themselves? So you can see an example where a story is written about your company based there was noise online,
Yep.
rather than whether there was any truth to it.
So we're seeing those sort of old world methods will use to deal with these scenarios, which is obviously not the most relevant or up to date way of doing it. In terms of what that means for an organization, can you explore for me some of the real world consequences of not dealing with this in a speedy, efficient way?
Yeah, we've seen everything from sudden drops in the company share price, customer panic, long-term reputational damage that can take years to repair, really, and even situations where members of the board have been exposed, maybe unjustly. And these situations, once they are out there in the public, can be very, very difficult to get under control. For example, in financial services, a well-timed fake news story has even been said to potentially cause a bank run, whereby, all the customers withdraw all their money, causing, potentially lasting damage to the business, or even something like a regulatory investigation. So the potential risks are far and wide and very real for a lot of businesses.
So I suppose a question to both of you. In the past we operated on that in that world of today's news, tomorrow's chip paper. We're not in that world now. Would you say that's a fair summary?
Yeah, and I think when you talk specifically about how AI has impacted this, because I think that's the big change there is the scale at which this can be done. What I call democratization of influence, which is that go back 10 years, if you wanted to create a large scale disruption campaign against corporate, you would need web developer, graphic designers, copywriters in order to create the sort of thing we're talking about here is, fake news websites, social posts that link to those websites. So something that looks like the BBC or looks like Reuters, but isn't. You mentioned the amount of skill that would have taken not that long ago to get the tone right of the copy and so on. Now that you can do a pretty good impression of one of those sites in a short period of time as a lone individual using a set of AI tools to do it. Now, I think you may be as familiar as I am with those ads you get on something like X that tell you that someone said something outrageous on this morning and their career's over forever.
Yeah.
And you click it and the text doesn't read like the BBC at all. But the advent of tools like ChatGPT, Google Gemini and so on means that you can create something that's the actual style of the BBC's content. So it adds a layer of authenticity to it, but it also reduces down to single people the size of the team needed to do this in the first place. Now, add on to that, automation of Facebook ads in order to make a story spread further, and tons and tons of variations of copy and images to see what works best with the audience, and all of a sudden you create something pretty substantial from your basement.
So what do you do, Will? How are we advising clients in this situation to manage this misinformation, disinformation online?
So speed is key, and preparation as well. However, it can be a delicate balance because obviously responding too slowly allows these falsehoods to propagate and to spread. But rushing out an inaccurate statement or information will definitely damage your credibility and can actually further negatively affect your reputation in the long run, particularly if you're faced with the prospect of large scale customer action, particularly if it involves moving money, such as in a bank run. Yeah, as I said initially, preparation. So have pre-approved holding statements, escalation protocols. Tom earlier mentioned simulations. If you can run through these situations in a real boardroom environment, that can really help you to prepare and understand what the risks that you're facing. But then also use the digital team, use social listening to understand what the sentiment is online. The goal is to become the authoritative source of information when this is happening, and so you need to have your ear to the ground to understand that.
Will just said there the online piece. So can we just go a bit deeper into that, Tom? We talk about protect, respond, and restore. And in terms of the online response to it, how do you advise clients to do that?
Well, let's take each of those three, in turn. So first of all, protect. So start with your monitoring. Is your monitoring fit for this new world? How many people's monitoring was set up in a time when AI related incidents were not an issue? The game's changed, detection must change too. Does your crisis playbook deal with scenarios involving AI disinformation? If so, have you stress tested them in a crisis simulation? What to say, where to say it, whether to pre-bunk or to debunk information. There are tools available now that will help you to game that. Now, moving on to respond, it's more important than ever to be moving quickly. You are dealing with a situation in which information can rapidly find its way across the internet. Easier said than done, but having the proper crisis prep in place gives you the best chance to respond rapidly.
It's an insurance policy.
It is, absolutely. And then restore, online cleanup, which is a very dull subject that people like me enjoy immensely, is more important than ever. Search dominated by AI overview, is a thing, like the first thing that you see on Google is written for you by an AI. Some people are moving towards using LLMs for search rather than using search engines in the first place. The first 2 pages of Google really matter to what those AI overviews say about you. And really importantly, so does Bing, because Bing is what ChatGPT is reading, the most used LLM in the world. It's what Copilot is using, something that many of us have in our working environment. So Bing is now really, really important to your online presence. But the usual stuff applies too, which is generate new news. positive stories after a crisis. Ensure rebuttal statements are included in negative press stories. Make sure that your own channels on Wikipedia are clear on what you did during a crisis and how you resolved it and what steps you've taken to make sure it doesn't happen again. And you will get a pretty good view online then of the positives coming out of a crisis rather than just the negatives that will be there otherwise.
Tom, thank you. Some really comprehensive advice there. Will, what would be your one piece of advice for firms that are looking to future-proof against AI-driven misinformation or reputational risk?
We like to look at crisis preparation not as a cost, but as an investment. So invest in yourself, invest in digital resilience, in training, in simulations, in getting your senior team up to speed, scenario planning, understanding what the situations that you might be facing. Then also know who your key stakeholders are. Build relationships with them. With the trusted media before a crisis hits. It's too late once the crisis comes, particularly with a disinformation campaign, which we've already discussed, can be a very fast-paced situation. And finally, your reputation is your most important asset. So look after that and, make sure you don't lose that, in a situation like this.
Tom, Will, thank you very much for breaking down for us some of those realities and the risk of misinformation and how to deal with it. At SEC Newgate, we know that the risks posed by digital innovation, from deep fakes to viral falsehoods, are evolving rapidly. But so too are the strategies to counter them. The advice is clear: protect, respond, restore. No organisation is immune, but every organisation can be prepared. If you'd like to know more about SEC Newgate, how we can help you and how we help our clients navigate these challenges, or if you have questions about safeguarding your reputation in a digital-first world, we're here to help.